Yeah, that's fine. So maybe do a little introduction. So hello, everybody. Welcome to the 6th Zoom talk of this year. And tonight we're welcoming Charlie Kennedy, and I'm sure many of you will know her. You've probably seen her talk at some of the BSD events, quite possibly.
Yeah, in the past.
Yeah, she's been a member for some time and a great supporter of the BSD. Fantastic. And anyway, Charlie's been working spiritually all her life and has been giving talks and been teaching for a very long time, should we say.
Module 5. Okay. So let's start with just calling to Sarah. There you go.
Can you get some more introduce? Any you can get all
I think this is the problem tonight. We're going to try a new experiment tonight. I don't know if it's going to work, but
Tropicana.
If you're listening, could you?
Well, the nearest to
Nick, best if you mute everybody.
Yeah, I know. But
hi, David.
Charlie. Hi, Charlie.
Yeah.
No, but tonight Charlie's welcoming questions as she goes along. So I would try a little experiment tonight where we leave the mics open. But I would ask you to try not to talk across everybody, people, if you can. But we'll give it a go. We'll see how far we get with it.
We'll see how it goes, won't we?
But so this is more like a sort of conversation, perhaps more than a talk. Okay. Well, it's both. Okay. So feel free to ask questions as we go along. And anyway, that's enough. I'm gonna leave it to Charlie now to take it away. Thanks, Charlie.
That's very good of you, Nick. Thank you. Well, welcome everybody to Thursday, the 16th of November. Now, officially, we're talking about opening safely to work with the spiritual realms and the need for spiritual protection. So one of the first questions, of course, is to try and find out how many of you have actually tried to channel spirit at all. And does anybody want to share something of their experiences of doing that? It's gone deathly silent.
Well, I can't say that I've tried to channel, but they just come to me occasionally.
Right. Is that it? And does that happen when you're dowsing, or does that happen just in everyday life?
Just in everyday life. It's never actually happened while I'm dowsing, strangely enough. It seems to be when I'm doing a certain activity that's related to the deceased person that I was close to.
Right. I need a chair. Oh, your chair. And so then, do you actually hear them? Do you see them, or do you sense them?
It's a fragrance usually.
Yeah.
For one particular aunt, it's mothballs and lavender.
Yes, I can guess what sort of era that was.
Yeah. And it's when I'm doing some craft work that she taught me, or when I'm cooking. So I could be cooking with some quite strong smells, but I'll still get the mothballs and the lavender over the strong cooking smells.
Yep, that's very normal. And often what you find is with that sort of thing is if you turn around because it's either behind you or something, it disappears. Have you noticed that?
I haven't actually. I tell you, the frustration for me is I'm usually busy at the time. I'm usually doing 3 or 4 things at once, which we're all doing. And so what I need to do when it happens again, I'm hoping it will happen again, I need to stay in the moment and really absorb what's going on.
The easiest thing to do is with that, and it's very common, is to basically not try to follow it. Just carry on with what you're doing and say to them, oh, I'm aware that you're there, and have a conversation with them.
Yeah.
Just talk to them as it normally.
Yeah. On one occasion when I was cooking, I didn't say anything, but her voice came through loud and clear. That's not how I taught you to make gravy, my girl.
There you go.
And I did actually
Correct you.
stop and make it properly.
Did you?
I dared not.
That's wonderful. But that is what they're like. Because they're letting you know that they're there, and then you can talk to them about anything.
Yeah.
Not just that. Because it is an everyday occurrence for an awful lot of people.
Mm.
And the good thing now is, of course, because everybody's got mobile phones, right? And everybody's talking with their earphones in and everything. And actually, it's very, very good because you can have a conversation to a loved one and nobody knows that you're actually speaking to somebody who is not really with you because they're also busy talking.
Yeah.
And they don't see because there's such small earphones now. You can walk down the street and talk to them. It is much easier. And
That's lovely.
yeah, because you won't be considered mad anymore. I mean, 30 or 40 years ago, before mobile phones, people would have stared at you. It's so much easier now, you know. And I talk in the street. I'm walking to catch the bus and I'm saying, yes, I know that the bus that I want is going to be 5 minutes late, but I still want to be at the bus stop. And, you know, they tell me everything. It's normal. It's a conversation. And everybody else is talking to whomever. So nobody notices, which is really helpful. Anybody else had the experiences of speaking with spirit or spirit people that have crossed who have at any time?
Can I just ask a question on that?
Any questions?
I can understand that Jill is visited when she's cooking and it was, sorry, I missed who your spirit, well, your mother, who did you say? The lady that taught Jill cooking, and so while Jill is cooking, I could see that would be the appropriate time to listen to what she has to say. But I mean, personally speaking, I'd like to arrange a more appropriate time, you know, when I can give them my full attention.
Then you have to speak out loud to them, and it's very simple. If you've recognized who it is, you just talk to them as if you were talking to them when they were alive and just say, this isn't an appropriate moment. How about, and say to them, the time now is, say, 3 o'clock in the afternoon or whatever your time is, and say, can we sit down and have a conversation and tell them the time, and then tell them how many hours that is, because they might have forgotten how the time lines. So if you say it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon and you want to speak to them at 8 o'clock in the evening, then tell them how many hours, and that you will be sitting quietly to speak with them. Is the first.
And I'd do it in my head rather than out loud.
They might need to hear it out loud to start with.
Okay.
Because that's often the block. You've actually got to learn to speak to them out loud until they get used to it, because it depends on how easy they're finding the communication from the other side. They might need to hear your voice.
Okay, thank you.
Which adds to the fun, I find. And some of them are just very amusing, because they often will say to you, please don't shout, because we speak too loudly when they come through. But the question of doing it safely is to find a quiet time and stay calm and say, I am ready to speak, you know, with and the thing is to make sure that you are grounded and really connected to Mother Earth when you begin to do it. Because that adds to you have to stay protected. Otherwise, you might get some astral beings coming through that will cause disturbances. And a trick to look for is, if you're going to sit at night for spirit to communicate with, if the lights start flashing, often that is them letting you know that they're there, but it also could be one that is causing mischief. So you need to make sure that you're grounded. And the question then is, do people understand what grounding is?
Yes.
Because it is very important. It then keeps you very strongly connected to Mother Earth when you are speaking, because there are some unpleasant spiritual beings out there. So we do have to stay very, very grounded. Now, does anybody not know what grounding is?
I know what it is, Charlie, but it'd be useful to hear what protocol you use.
The easiest thing that I have found, I mean, I use different protocols because I've been doing it forever. So that's a bit of I teach a grounding exercise, which is on my website, on the healing page at the bottom. And what you've got to know is whether you're left-sided or right-sided. Missed what somebody was saying. Somebody spoke and I missed who it was. I'll go back to Julia. So you need to know if you're left or right-sided. And it's not just handed, it's sided. So check whether or not when you stand up and walk, which leg goes forward first. And then do a grounding exercise beforehand that will keep you safe. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's good.
I like your scarf.
Mine?
It's very lovely.
I've got rather an itchy jumper on, actually, and I felt I needed it to
it's
give me a soft lining. Thank you.
No, so does that help you? Because I mean, there are many different ways of doing grounding. There's lots of teaching. Sue Allen used to always teach about putting an anchor down from your base chakra down into the sea. That's fine if you're at sea. That is what I always found. Because if you're not at sea, you don't need to. And some people can't relate to that if they're just in their homes. But there are quite a lot whereby if you've physically got your feet on the floor and you're feeling really rock solid, and certainly for newcomers, the grounding that's on my website is about you lean against a piece of wood and you are behaving as if that is an oak tree. And you are connecting and breathing with it. And that really holds you steady so that there is no problem. And the man whose voice it is a wonderful thespian who's got a lovely voice. So it is, and it's knowing whether or not you're right or left-sided, which is literally which foot goes forwards first.
So how do you adjust your grounding then, depending on your foot-sidedness?
It's there's two meditations on there, one for left-sided people and one for right-sided people.
Oh, okay. Where is it?
It's on my website, charliekennedy.co.uk, on the healing page at the bottom under some tree roots.
Okay, thank you.
And the thing with it is lots of people used to be taught to ground down the right side only. But if you're left-sided, you can't do that.
Nice.
And it is one of those things. It is very important for security and safety. And if you are grounded, you cannot be affected by any of the unpleasant things in the spiritual realms that we need protection from.
And this is a particular grounding. It's not like a grounding you do for dowsing. So it's
not the same.
Okay.
If you're going to work with the spiritual realms, you need to be rock steady.
May I ask a question, please?
Of course you can.
Does the side that you're grounded on, your left foot or your right foot, does that bear any relationship to the side that the messages come from? Because my experience has always been that they drop in on the right-hand side. And I am right-handed, but I don't know if I'm right-footed or left-footed. I don't know about that. But does everyone receive messages and communication on the right-hand side of the... No, it's different for everyone. Right, okay. I just wondered.
Some people hear it in one ear, in effect. They feel like it's coming in one ear. Others actually hear it behind them. Everybody is different.
Right, okay, thank you.
That's easy.
You hear it within as well?
Yes, a lot of people do. And you have people who are deviceless dowsers and their body gives them all the information. That's what, a lot of dowsers are now, deviceless, which is kind of good fun.
Yes.
But Christopher Strong was a really good deviceless dowser.
Mhm.
And you find the more you dowse, you can become a deviceless dowser.
And Billy
Yeah, I
Gorman.
prefer to just stay in the state where I can turn it on and off rather than let it control me. Because I found that if I douse at home and then I go out, I've turned it on. And if I walk under lampposts, this is more of a dowsing comment really, but we have new lampposts which are like that. If I walk
know
under
those.
that, I get a thumping pain
Yes.
in my head.
You would
For
have to
example.
close yourself down before you go out after dowsing. Ground yourself after dowsing.
I know, but that's when I want to turn on deviceless dowsing, you see. I go out ready and then then I have to avoid the obstacles.
Yes,
So
it is a bit of fun. Those lamps are awful.
they're terrible.
They're really not nice. They are very
Broadband, if you go over a broadband manhole, it's like that.
Yes, that makes you very sensitive to them. Bless them. I
Yeah.
find that if I go past houses that have now got the 5G network, I get pains. It's really not nice.
No.
And there's certain places you just can't go. And so, yeah, there's some places I just can't go anymore. You know, my friend has got a car park by her house and there's a substation in it. I can't go even in the car park.
Right.
So you do get more sensitive, and we're going to find this with 5G a lot more. And a lot of people have difficulties because of all the Bluetooth stuff that's around. So those that are incredibly sensitive find it really difficult.
Okay.
It's much nicer if you're actually out in the countryside and you haven't got all these problems. If you're in a city, it's a nightmare. Adds to the fun, Sue.
Yeah.
I think Mary Smells wants to ask a question at this point.
Mary,
Yeah.
I can see you now.
Yeah. Hello.
Hello.
On the subject of all this electromagnetic pollution, which it is pollution, because I think it's not just damaging to us, I think it's very damaging to the natural world, particularly to the insect world. There's been a lot of things published in Russian that you can get in translation, where they're very adamant that 5G in particular is extremely toxic to the insect world. As dowsers, should we be making this knowledge much more widely available to people and telling them that things like smart meters and earbuds and those sort of things are so toxic, particularly if they've got young children?
Well, the thing is it the BSD's policy to do that? So we'd have to go and ask Nick and the trustees whether or not that is our duty to do. Is it part of what the BSD would like us to do?
Yeah. As individuals, do you feel something that you should do? For instance, if you were working with a client who had a child or a family member who was being particularly badly affected by, say, a smart meter, we'd obviously tell them, wouldn't we? Because that would be part of our service to them. So
you might not want to hear it, though.
No, but I'm afraid they get it anyway, don't they? You know, you can lead a horse to water, can't you? And they can please themselves, and they might not hear it this year or next year, but they might come to another crisis point in life and they go, oh, that person told me this, therefore I'm going to try it now. So
there's quite a lot on the internet about it. I mean, there's whole conspiracy theories about all this stuff. And it is a question for individuals. Yes, by all means, if you're happy to raise awareness about the fact that the electromagnetic energy can harm young people and can harm the elderly.
Yes, and it harms the fertility of young people. You know, young people who carry their phone in a handbag around their abdomen, or young men that carry a phone
up here
out of pocket, they're sterilizing themselves.
That is what has been said. Whether or not it's been scientifically proved, I don't know. It is a question. We could have a whole conversation about that.
You could, I'll stop, sorry.
No, because it's very valid. It's very valid. I can't have a smart meter in my house because I am so electromagnetic. I mean, if suddenly my TV turns itself on, then you'll all see the strange things that go on because it's unplugged. But it does turn itself on. And I have terrible problems with it being so sensitive. But, you know, other people don't.
Yes.
And I think it's horses for courses. If somebody is saying that their child is behaving badly, ask them how long the child spends on electrical equipment. And advise accordingly that possibly their bad behavior is because they're exposed to too much blue light or too much electromagnetic.
Yeah.
And you can direct them first to manufacturers' instructions with them, some things, because there are guidelines published.
But they've even got adverts.
It doesn't
on
mean
TV
that they,
now
I haven't got a
about
TV, so I don't know.
But they are showing adverts. I saw one last night where they are saying about are saying about switching children's. They've got a device that switches the children's electrical gadgets off at a certain time. And they're showing the children having temper tantrums. So people are much more aware of it than they were 10 years ago.
Yeah.
See, my daughter went to a Steiner school. They weren't allowed mobile phones. They weren't allowed to use computers. Nothing.
Good.
You know, but we can't all live like that.
No.
Because people are what they are, and they've got to find out for themselves. But it's an interesting subject, and it's possibly something the BSD wants to look at. How would is it the BSD's role? Is it in our terms of reference to draw attention to electromagnetic energy around young, old, or sick people? Because that's something for the trustees to look at. Because we do have all our objects and everything, so it is something, memonarts and all of that, and it says what the BSD does. It's about education, yes, we are to educate people. Don't think it says about the dangers of electromagnetic, you know, vibrations, or whatever you want to call them. But it is something to ask.
Sorry, I think there have been quite a few dowsers who've written articles and given talks. So Graham Gardner does a lot with electromagnetic frequency talks in this country and other countries, and you know, there is quite a lot of it going on an individual basis.
There's a lot in What Doctors Don't Tell You as well, and quite a lot of other publications about it. And it is one of those things that it's sensitive.
Yeah, back in the 80s, Harry Oldfield had had a setup in Ruislip, and designed lots of machines, electrocrystal therapy. He, on his own, worked out the frequency of each of the chakras and then designed machines to reproduce those frequencies, and also a range of frequencies that were higher and lower. And what he would do with a sound meter was register the person's overall level of sound, 8 or 9. And then he would test each of the chakras. And if one of them, say, for instance, if the heart chakra was vibrating too high, it produced multiple sclerosis. It made the body attack its own brain tissue.
He did a lot of work.
He could bring down, by feeding in the correct frequency, he could bring it down to normal and stop MS in its track, you know. So he's been doing that since the 80s, but probably he's not as well known as he should be. He didn't get very good press in this country. He worked a lot in hospitals with terminally ill cancer patients. And he eventually got kicked out because he had such good results. The surgeons didn't like it, you know, the consultants weren't too happy, and they got rid of him. So he tried eventually to get his business going in India, because they're much more accepting of chakras. Obviously, that's where they come from. I did the training back in the 80s, and I have his machines, and I have treated quite a few people. So there has been a lot of it going on, but it hasn't been well known, I think, is the problem.
A lot of medical
people
professionals don't want it well known.
No, but there are a lot of people who plod on with determination. Apart from dowsers, it's my point. You know, it's not. There's a very small group of people within the dowsing community, but there are an awful lot of people outside of it who carry on regardless and do wonderful work. And we just need to make all the connections, connect up all the dots and communicate better, and you know, advertise all these things, I think.
When
Can you remind me of the gentleman's name again, please?
Harry Oldfield.
Are we talking about radionics?
No, he's not a radionics practitioner.
Oh,
Harry was a science teacher at Harrow originally, and he ran an after-school science club for the students. And they started by messing about with Kirlian photography. And from that, he became more and more interested and started doing his own research. And eventually he built his own laboratory in his back garden in Ruislip and set it up as a therapeutic centre. And honestly, when we students would go for training, the whole car would be full up with, the whole street would be full of cars and people clamouring to get in, and there'd be 4 or 5 students, and every room in the house was full of patients. It was a bit manic.
He was very popular, and he used to give a lot of talks at the College of Psychic Studies.
Yes.
And he wrote books, and he did a lot also with eyesight and different glasses to see spirit better. And to see the aura and everything much better. And so he was very popular. I think I last went to a talk of his in about 2013, possibly, because he's written a few books, I believe.
Yes, he did write a few books, but he did discovered marvelous things, like if someone cut off the top of their finger, if they didn't get it stitched, with his treatment, the finger regrew itself. But if you turned the skin over the top and stitched it, it didn't regrow because you'd stopped, you know, you'd stopped the energy getting to where it needed to be. And he could regenerate nerve tissue. He worked with Down syndrome children to reduce the size of their tongues so that they could speak. He did marvelous work, as I say, in all kinds of areas. But he's moved to North Wales now, and I don't think he's doing as much as he used to do. But yeah, his work, if you look online, there's ever such a lot about electrocrystal therapy, and interviews with him and recordings of science programs that he's spoken on. There's quite a lot online, and a whole range of marvelous photographs, because with his camera and computer system, you can actually see all the energies in nature.
Yes, very well known for that.
Energy fields of flower. Have a look online. There's a lot of photographs there, and they're quite marvelous, really. Anyway, I'm rambling on. Sorry.
There's quite a few people like Harry who quietly get on with doing things, which is wonderful. When you discover them, and you can get lost. You can get lost. That's the fun bit. You can get lost for quite a long time.
I don't know if anybody's heard of Sid Soothill. He's up in North Yorkshire. My son's 45 now, but 42 years ago I was desperate. My son was so ill, and Sid Soothill was doing a very similar thing. He didn't call it electrocrystal therapy. I can't remember what he called it now, but he was a spiritual healer, and he dowsed. And he dowsed for the food that my son should be eating. So we changed his diet completely. And Sid worked on him through the auric field, hand healing and crystals. He was amazing. I can't imagine that he's still with us because he was quite elderly then. But that's what introduced me to dowsing and homeopathy and auric healing, and
all of which is incredibly helpful.
Yeah.
Just
A question for you, Charlie, if I may.
Yes, of course. Who
More
am I
back on the
speaking to?
spiritual theme again.
Oh, Rob.
Yeah.
I'm the main.
I've been given some advice about aiding communication with the spiritual realms.
Yeah.
And one piece of advice I was given was to set yourself up in a slightly darkened room with a candle on the table and put a bowl of water in front of the candle and look at the candle to aid concentration on communicating with the spiritual realm. What do you think about this particular method I've been recommended?
That is a very old one that, to be honest, I can honestly tell you it works. One, it works. What often happens is having the bowl of water in front of the candle, it's a bit like scrying because you get to see images in the water. But most healers I'm writing the history of the National Federation of Spiritual Healers. Harry Edwards would sit quietly with a candle in a slightly darkened room. Ursula Roberts did, Estelle Roberts did. The old mediums back then in the 30s, 40s and 50s and 60s all used that as a way to attune to spirit and start the conversations. It is a slightly darkened room. I mean, if you've got a salt lamp like I have next to me here, that's a good one, but a candle will work equally as well, or a tea light. And the water is always good because you'll get images in the water.
That's good, valid advice then.
It is good, valid advice.
Thank you.
It really is. Just make sure you're grounded. Because sometimes you can see things and you sort of panic. Like, what was that? And when you first start, it's a bit interesting when you see things because you doubt that you've seen it. You look at it and you see it. And then it's like, I've imagined that. That didn't happen. And so it's actually quite good to sit regularly. When I first start students off, I ask them to sit every night at 9 o'clock for 5 minutes. And to sit in a darkened room with a small lights and just sit and be still. And if they want to put a bowl of water, that's fine. And see what happens. And even talk. Listen to some nice music. Some people need music. Now, personally, I do not like the sound of dolphins or whales and that sort of music. I find that grates on my ears, but lots of people like the sound of waves or some form of relaxing music, classical music, anything like that, so that they can just be quiet and calm. The trick of actually being able to focus and communicate to spirit is that you need to be calm. So whatever makes you calm. If lying on your sofa with your eyes closed makes you calm, you will find that spirit will come once they've got used to you doing it regularly.
So would a guided meditation be useful in getting you in the right mood beforehand?
If you like that sort of thing, lots of people don't, and lots do. It's 50-50, you know. I can't stand a guided meditation. I find them absolutely hideous. But they do work for an awful lot of people. And as a healer, when I'm working with somebody, they either want to have some music on so they can relax, or they would like to have a lavender bag over their eyes so that they're actually not looking at the room. You need to not focus on what's around you. You need to be in a sort of solitary state and allow things to happen. And however you get relaxed, it's all about relaxing. Some people do breathing exercises. A lot of people start off with breathing over a period of 3, 5, and 7. You breathe in to the count of 3, hold for 5, and expel the air for 7. Others start with 3, 3, and 3. There's many different ways of getting relaxed, and it's personal. Some people listen to the cricket and can relax. It's whatever suits the individual. There's no set way of doing it. It's relaxing and having it subdued lighting. That's all you need to do. And do it regularly so that spirit know that you're sitting. You can say to them as you're in your house, you're going home from work or whatever, being out, and say, well, I'm going to sit down at 7 o'clock tonight if you want to join me. And they will hear you. And the good thing now with mobile phones is nobody's going to think you're bonkers when you're saying this as you're walking along the street to go back to your house. You can just make a date to do it at a certain time or on a certain day once a week. Because that's what used to happen. Circles would be held on a Tuesday, on a particular night, where a group of people would get together and sit in a circle, and they'd hold hands in a particular way, and they would meditate quietly, and then spirit would start speaking. That's the beginning of a spiritual development group, as was held traditionally. And so it's all about being relaxed.
The closest thing I've got to it so far is I was in a pub doing some dowsing work. I went into their breakfast room, which was darkened at that particular point, and I was trying to communicate by using my dowsing rods as a yes/no answer routine. And a very small orb appeared in the room in the darkness, and as soon as the orb appeared, I was starting to getting answers on my dowsing rod. But that's the close. I haven't got direct communication, but only through the dowsing rod.
No, but use it then. A lot of my students find that they need to use a pendulum, and they'll ask a question and they get the yes and no. And when they've got more confidence of doing that, they then start to hear yes and no. And then they get a conversation going. It is often the way that people who are used to dowsing start either with their dowsing rods or the pendulums, and then it goes on from there. It's being relaxed enough to actually leave your imagination behind and let the information come to you. Everybody goes, oh, I made that up. Most people who come to a starting group will say, it's my imagination. I imagined it. And they need to give themselves a positive thought form. No, I didn't imagine it. I got the information spiritually. Some people just get the information. It's like they're seeing the words. Good old-fashioned telegram. They're reading a telegram, in effect. Or they just get the words. But they're not hearing them. They're just there. And some people get photos and things. They get images, all sorts of things. And then they start to hear voices. And the fun thing is when you've got a group together doing it, because then the energy, the vibration gets higher. You will have one person saying, I can hear a lady saying that the cushion is too lumpy or something. And then somebody say, oh, I heard that too. And so it's sometimes when 3 or 4 people sit together regularly, just for half an hour, they start to get the same information and they are believing they've made it up, imagined it. And then when somebody else says, no, that's what I got too. And that's the beginning of a lot of development. It starts simply.
Yeah, so practice. Well, first with a mechanical device, and then once you start getting some feedback with your brain, then you can forget about the mechanical device.
Well, it's like for me, I'll ask a question. I'll say, 2 Moons, what are we going to do on Sunday when we have the advanced group? And he'll come back and say, well, once they've stopped nattering, because they all natter, bless them, then what we're going to do is this, this, and this. And it's like, for me, it's normal conversation. It's like I'm talking to you. I talk out loud to spirit and they give me the answer. And it's like they're saying it. And sometimes my daughter will walk in and said, 2 Moons has just told me. And I'm like, oh, well, how was he talking to you as well? She said, as I was coming down the stairs, and, you know, other people can sometimes hear what he's saying to me, but they haven't got his voice. But they've got exactly what he said. So some people hear it, some people feel it. It's very bizarre. It is not necessarily, you don't hear with your ears. We make the mistake. We actually hear with our eyes and we see with our ears. The hairs in your ears actually see things. And so it's no good turning around when you hear a voice behind you, because they'll disappear to the other behind you. It's just very strange. You have to get used to the fact that your eyes are not seeing and your ears are not hearing. The sound is coming at you from somewhere, and it's not in your head. Clairvoyants do not hear sounds in their heads. They really don't. That's a psychiatrist saying, oh, you hear sounds in your head. No, 2 Moons is talking to me. He's standing next to me talking to me. He's not in my head. Sometimes I want him to go away. And then sometimes others speak to me. So it's like normal. It's
If
like
you-
having a conversation with all of you. We're all on a computer talking to each other. And I had the same conversations with Two Moons, except he hasn't got a physical body.
If you suddenly found yourself talking to somebody that you thought shouldn't be talking to you, how would you disconnect that conversation?
I ask them to go away. I just say, I'm very sorry. I'm having a private conversation if I'm talking to somebody else. This is not the appropriate time to have a conversation. Please, can you go away? Please leave me alone. And you must learn to say that to spirit when they're being annoying, is say to them, this is not appropriate time. I'll talk to you tonight at this time, and it's this time now. So you say it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I'll sit down at 7:30 and we can have a conversation. But if it's something unpleasant or someone unpleasant that is being aggressive or unpleasant, you just say to them, I don't wish to speak to you anymore. Please leave. And 99.9% of the time they do.
Hey, Charlie, thank you very much.
No, that's all right. They're the good questions. These are the ones we like.
I'd be interested to know if anybody else had this when they were little. When I used to, I don't know if it was when I went to bed or just relaxed, I used to get, in the evening, used to get hundreds of views flashing past my, I don't know which eyes, maybe deep inside again. And then also music going, and I would be tapping it out through my fingers because it would be really, it'd be nice, it'd be quite upbeat music.
Yeah, that is quite normal.
Yeah. But did anyone else have those experiences?
Anyone else had that? You're not
it was every night, flashes, loads and loads and loads of scenery, as if I'd been, I suppose like photographs really.
Did any of those images, do you ever remember, were they things that you'd seen that day, or were they?
No, they were new. It was really exciting.
I got those. I used to get those, and I also used to be able to hear the radio when the radio was not turned on.
Yes,
I've had that.
And I used to get Morse code in my head as well. I could pick up things that were coming through radio waves, loads.
Yes.
And I could switch electrical things on and off remotely.
Oh, I didn't do that.
Without really trying. And I can still do that unconsciously now if I'm annoyed. Like remember banks, when banks had, you could walk in there and my bank bounced a check and I was really cross about it because they didn't ring me and give me an alternative. And it was really embarrassing. And I went in the bank and I was really cross. And all the computer terminals in that bank went down, and apparently nationally every computer in every bank of that same route went off at the same time. And I did it in a supermarket when somebody barged in front of me and all the tills went down. So I think if they got me when I was about 12, and trained me, I could probably be one of the best weapons that they've got, which is a horrible thought. But no, I used to get all that sort of weird stuff. And what I did want to ask was, I'm one of these incorrigible people who pokes their nose in, and occasionally I get things manifesting that are really, really unpleasant. For instance, I was staying in an ashram in India and nobody could transfer any money and the computers kept blinking off and on. And I said, I'll debug them for you. You've got a jinn. And being in India, they're really into that. They go, can you do that? And I said, yeah, I can do that. So I de-ginned their computer system. And then there was a look of horror on the faces of 2 or 3 people that were standing in front of me.
Yeah.
And they were frozen in horror. And I turned around and there was an 8-foot manifestation of something rather unpleasant. So I always use Jesus. I always say, in the name of Jesus Christ. And I'll use the blood of Jesus for me too, and say I'm protected by the blood of Jesus. You have no joinder with me. And I talk to angels as well when I'm working, because I think if there are some things who like causing mischief, and if you challenge them, they'll come and try and frighten you. And for me, the key to it is to be totally unafraid and just curious. And, oh, you're an 8-foot, very unpleasant person. So what? You're going, rather than reacting. Because I think fear feeds them. I think that's what they like. They like to make people scared, and that energizes them. That's my experience. What's anybody else?
Well, they're called lower astrals, usually, and they do like mischief. And so the thing to do is to actually be strong. And one of the things that I teach students to do when they do have something like that is often it shows as dark and something they're scared of. Is to actually say to them, what you do is you just say, please go away. I'm not frightened of you. Please leave. And 99.9% of the time they go. And lots of people do naturally go into the Lord's Prayer, or they ask in the name of Jesus Christ, our Lord, please leave. And that is perfectly natural. And it does depend on your religion and your training within your family religion as to what you do. But others also, I've trained people who are not Christians to actually turn on the light of the sun when there is something unpleasant showing itself, because that scares it away. So the golden light of the sun is a really good one, depending on what religion people are. But many people will go straight into the Lord's Prayer and ask that, and in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, please go away. That is natural if you're Christian to do that. And so obviously, if you're Jewish, you're not going to say, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. You're going to ask for the Father and the Holy Spirit. But there are standard things to do based on your religious and cultural background that people do. And of course, the sign of the cross always does it.
Yeah.
For most people. But turning on the sun is a brilliant one. And never, ever scream or show that you're fearful. You stay calm at all times.
Yeah.
And that's why grounding is so important, because if you're grounded, it won't shock you so that you fall over, because they want to spook you. And they're usually lower astral beings. There are some deeply unpleasant things that are not lower astral beings, but it's very rare that anybody would naturally come across them, unless you've been dabbling in the occult and black magic and stuff, which is a dangerous place to go and not to be advised. But ideally, the thing is on doing any form of development to work with spirit is do it in a group with a good facilitator who can actually get rid of them when they come in. But it does happen. I have terrible problems with images and things, but I break everything, I'm stunned that I'm not going to say it, because computers turn off, all sorts of things go wrong around me. When I was an accountant, I'd go into clients and I'm not allowed near their servers because it would switch off. But I'm banned from Sainsbury's local because their tills don't work when I walk in. I have to send my friend in for me. I can wait outside, but if I cross the threshold, that those tills that don't have people at, they all stop working.
Oh, and that's a good thing. They're horrible.
Well, they are. Well, the manager says to me, Charlie, get out of the shop. Get out of the shop. And I have to leave. So it is very normal that when you're working with spirit that you have computerized things go wrong. Anything can break, to be totally honest. It's a bit of a bore. I just tell people now that I'm a klutz with computers rather than try to explain the electromagnetic problem and everything. It's much easier.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, I don't know how to do it because they break. I've broken far too many over the years. Let's meet.
I'd like to comment on what Sue said about the pictures. I very often, if I close down my eyes and try and up my third eye here, I will see moving pictures.
Third eye isn't there. That's your brow chakra. The third eye is out in the aura here. So
it's there.
Yes,
but I see the picture
the image
somewhere.
Here.
Okay. And it'll be something that happens later in the day.
Yes, that's normal too.
Nothing dramatic, but to think, oh, I saw this morning.
Yeah. That's often some of the beginning signs of are you being aware that you have the ability to work with spirit. You see, and sometimes you see it 3 days beforehand. That's always good. You see, I mean, I used to see accidents that were about to happen 3 days later, and then I'd tell the person, please don't drive your red car tomorrow at this time.
Yeah.
You know, and things like that. It's after a while, people sort of, you know, do kind of. In the 1960s, they used to look at me as if I was strange when I tell them not to drive in a red car on this date, because, and then a red car that they were supposed to be in would actually break or get smashed or something. So yeah, that was the fun bits. But it does happen, and I'm sure others have had that. They've actually seen something that happens a day or a few hours later.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of strangely normal after a while.
Do you
Well,
ever
I've stopped telling people. I just wait and see what happens.
They look at you as if you're mad. They look at you as if you're mad when you warn them about something.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's best not to. If it upsets you that they think you're bonkers, don't say anything. Maybe keep a notebook that you write things down in, and then you can afterwards say, this, I predicted, I saw that on this date, and it happened on this date, or it happened 3 hours later, because that then is confirmation for you. The spiritual realms will want to show you things so that they are confirming to you that you are working with them. And so it's good confirmation.
Thank you. The other thing that happens is my granddaughter, she's in her 20s now. But when she was about 5 or 6, she used to tell me things about people that she'd never met, our family. But she'd only ever tell me when it was just the two of us, not when any of the other family were there. But I did manage to get some things verified. And she was coming through with some incredible stuff that nobody else would know. I spoke to a widow whose husband had died. And she was quite angry. She said, there's no way you could have known that. I said, well, it was my 5-year-old granddaughter that knows it.
There is a problem because people do get very spooked, and children under the age of 7, actually the easiest way of doing it with children, when they haven't lost their front teeth, find it so much easier to communicate with the spiritual realms.
And they've still got their milk teeth.
Yes. Yeah.
What happens there? What's happening
when they lose their front teeth is when the age of reason comes in for a child.
Ah, yes.
And that's when normality hits.
Yeah.
So before that, they often see and hear things and will tell you, but they'll want it to be a secret because they don't want other people to laugh at them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very normal. It's very, very normal. And they can see the spiritual realms, they can speak to them. It's and you know, they have their invisible friends.
Yeah.
And all of that. Or one of their pets, one of their toys will be a dog that walks by their side. That is all perfectly natural. But when they lose the front teeth is when the logic comes in of being a human. And that's when some of them lose it, but often it will come back in 7-year cycles. Spirit will knock back on the door at some point. Some lose it and then get it back at 14. Some get it back at 21, 28. The 7-year cycles are very important for development. So if a child, your granddaughter, had it up until the change of teeth, when she gets older, she might, in the 7-year cycles, then say at some point that she wants to go to a yoga class or something, or she wants to go and look at this. And it will bring back the ability to do things.
Well, she'll be 21 next year, and she's just qualified as in reflexology. So she's going down what would be considered the peripheral or alternative therapy routes. Healing, yeah.
See what happens, because she'll be able to pick things up. She'll know because reflexology is feet, isn't it? Unless I've got my therapy. And she will be able to read people's feet much better than somebody who has never had that experience.
Well, a lot of my family are to do with feet because they're dancers or they're reflexology. We've got something about feet in my family.
Foot fetish. Possibly.
That's easier to explain.
Yes. We've got an obsession with feet in our family. And it comes out in dance and things, yes.
Yeah.
Much easier.
Thank you.
Does happen. Things run through families.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it's almost like looking at the whole of the family and seeing, you know, what it is. Because, I mean, dance is expressing yourself through your feet.
Mm. But it's interesting, the granddaughter I've just spoken about, she's so much like the aunt that comes back to me. She's like her in stature and the way she moves and some of the things she says. I think, oh, that's my Auntie Olive. Of course, they've never met. They've never met. Yeah.
It runs true. It does.
Yeah.
It really does. And of course the family DNA as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is quite funny when I look at my aunt, my father's sister. I mean, I just look at her and I know I'm looking in the mirror.
Yeah.
I don't look a bit like my mother. I look like my father's sister. It is absolutely unbelievable. And she says things to me. She's now 99, and she'll say, Charlie, you've got to remember you're going to be the matriarch of this family soon. And I'm saying, please don't say that. That's not cool and groovy. And she said, and then it won't matter that you're peculiar. And I was like, Auntie June, I'm peculiar? And she says, well, of course we are. We're Kennedys.
Yeah.
And I just laugh. I just go, okay. And I just thought, she said, anyway, she said, you speak to those spooky things. And it's just funny. You know, I just think.
Yeah.
But it is. Things run in families.
Yeah.
It's easier.
Can I ask?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, cut you off there. So if you're dowsing and you decide this is a moment to ask for an impression, which I have done when I've been map dowsing on a really challenging project, and the impression comes in and I find out later it's accurate. I don't know if that's from my intuition or from spirit input.
You've got to remember that most dowsers are actually, the spiritual realms are helping them find what they're doing. They're helping. They're there beside you and they are helping you.
All right.
And sometimes it's much easier with map dowsing to just sit there with your eyes half closed, look at the map and let them give you all the information.
Okay, now this is why I'm asking you. Okay, I admit this. So I have had many visitations, just people passing, like my best at school, I'm still connected, best friend's mother the day after she passed. And I could tell it was her by her energy, and it was deep down, but sometimes I hear it, but sometimes there are visual impressions that come in here.
Yep.
Not here or here, but here somewhere. And then so I've had quite a lot of that, and I've had things like when I've been just dowsing with the pendulum. One time I was upset and my grandmother held my hand here. It's nothing alarming. It's very gentle. It's like, it's the tiniest touch. And you know, I knew who it was. But then I am wary about not being able to interpret, but that's not the reason I'm saying this, because last night I had, I've already also had a visitation from somebody who was on a course that I did long ago, and she told me she passed in a car crash the year after she got married. And I'd been given a dowsing task to look at some mine tunnels, but the impression that she gave me last night was the side of the mining tunnels with the wall taken away, so you could see the system.
Yes.
Which is interesting. But then it, you know, it feels too exciting, even though I've previously had her giving me her news, you know, and it felt like I go down to my solar plexus to how I try to verify if I have doubt. I prefer not to. I'm not inviting these
no,
visits.
that's all right.
So can you advise people of ways they can be sure if they're in doubt? I think that would be useful.
So you're getting the images that you're being shown by
that's
spirits.
that's to help me with my dowsing job that I've got to do. That because we're both from Cornwall, and it's a mining.
I was going to ask you, was this in Cornwall by any chance?
Yeah, and it's relevant in our background as well. But...
Well, the question then is the fact that she's giving you these views, in effect, of things.
It was an amazing image.
Do you then write down what she's given you or draw that image?
I didn't feel that I needed to draw it because it's still imprinted.
Yep. So it's
so strong.
You see, from my point of view, when I get things like that, particularly with dowsing, I get some very strange things anyway. I write down what I've got and look at it. The dogs come to the party. The dog didn't want you to be on TV without the dog. Isn't that funny? Dogs come to the party. It's a spaniel, yes? Spaniel. Never mind. But what it is, Sue, is you've got that image. I go with it each time. And then
she told me it's to help you douse the mine. Yeah, she told me that.
So she's actually showing you what's there that you can't see.
And I said, why are you helping me? And she said something like,
oh, why not?
We need to help. Because I question everything.
No, I do. When Two Moons gives me new information that I've never heard of anything like that before, I'm like, well, this is great news, but how am I going to prove it? And they always find a way. I will then get the next day more information. Somebody say something? Yes? Hello?
Hello, I've just turned on for my wife.
That's all right. I mean, Sue, I would go with it. I would literally go with it. And you will get information later that will prove it to you in another way.
And I'm quite wary of
it's extra
something, an impression coming in and it's not where I think it's from. So I'm not asking at all, but
how do you mute it?
If I'm dowsing, I go into my solar plexus. That's where I go.
Do you put your spiritual hand or your physical hand on your solar plexus to confirm?
I put neither hand there. I send my focus there.
Send your focus there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you therefore get information that it's correct. You get the feeling it's correct.
Oh yes, yeah.
Yeah. Always, because the solar plexus is good for that tremendously, because that is the emotional center.
Yeah.
And it's the center that will tell you that whether or not what the information you've received is correct.
Okay, I found it out by wandering about.
Did you?
A bit.
Well, it's a good one. You see, I would put my spiritual hand on my solar plexus if I wanted confirmation.
Oh, okay.
And some people find that they use their solar plexus for deviceless dowsing. I had a student who was the best deviceless dowser just by putting a hand on a solar plexus, and she'd get an almighty thump from inside for yes, and a very light fluttering for no.
Oh, that's interesting.
And so we're all different as to what we get, and that's the uniqueness of each individual physical. As Two Moons calls us, we're not people, we're physicals.
Yeah.
And so everybody will have something different that gives them the reassurance of the information they've got. I had a friend who used to get a pulse in his head as confirmation that what he had just witnessed from the spiritual realms was bang on correct. And there's everything, you know.
Oh yes, and also we were taught to when you're water dowsing, if you're you ask for the source and then you can taste the water. It's like, no, I can't taste the water. But again, I go into my solar plexus for the impression. Yeah. I can't taste it myself.
But you get the impression of the water.
Exactly, the impression of tasting it.
It's good. It's until you get a metallic taste.
Yeah, I haven't had that because it's oral. I mean, it's verbal.
Yeah.
Mm.
They will work with you in any way that you work. Spirit are good. They will take your strength and they will work with that. And then slowly you can develop. Some people go, so you're using senses tremendously. So you're clairsentient naturally.
Yeah.
We all have clairvoyance, clairaudience, or clairsentience. There are other clairs, because we call them the clairs, but those are the three that most people talk about, and we've all got different ways, and you'll get confirmation and information through one of those ways. And then when you go to a development group, you can learn to develop the others as well, so that you can pick up hearing and seeing.
Okay.
Imagine if you can hear, see, and sense. It's an assault on every sense.
See and sense. Well, it depends what the situation is. Because one time I felt the weight of the person who it wasn't so much me. It was my former husband, so that he knew, but obviously I knew him as well. And it was his wife, and I felt she was so heavy, so that I felt it all over.
You say 28.
That can be disconcerting, can't it?
Yes, it was quite surprising.
Yeah, it can be a bit of a shock. Sometimes you do get that, and it is. They're trying to make you aware that they're there, and that either they've got a message for you or something, and sometimes you might not want it.
Well, that one, I don't think I got it completely right. So, I'm not seeking it out. That's the thing.
No. Never go looking for trouble.
I don't want to, no.
No, don't go looking for trouble. Don't go looking for trouble.
But one time I was painting the energy of the water beneath my feet. It was about, let me just try and remember. I think it's about 40 feet beneath my feet in a place that I know. And I wanted to just douse it. But the problem is my great-great-great-grandpa stepped in, but then his brother came along and said, I want to do some as well.
Yes, there's a family affair.
Family affair. The first time, I did it twice, the first time, and I could tell the difference between their styles.
Yes.
When they were painting. And the first one was really tight and classically trained. The second one, well, just looser. And then the second time, only one came. The tight one came. The other one didn't come.
It isn't that it's evidential proof that things are changing and that different people are working. Because sometimes what you might find, Sue, is that when you're painting, one of them might want to paint a picture using you as their body, using you.
Yes, that's what it felt like. That's what it felt like.
That could be good. That could actually be part of a message that they want to get through, perhaps.
Oh, yes.
And so in effect, it's a bit like when I'm training students, I get spirits to come and overshadow them when they're in my cabinets. And then the other students can see that, say it was your face, you're sitting in my cabinet, and somebody else's face comes over your face, who is completely different to you. And when students start to see that, they then go, oh, I saw something, and they're then describing to each other what they've seen, and that this person had a much longer, thinner face, and they're all describing the same person because they all saw it. So it's confirmation that they're actually beginning.
Yeah.
And equally, they get the words. And so it's all about developing further than just sensually, so that you get hearing and you get visualization, which is good.
But there's that other thing, though. If you look in the mirror and you focus here, you see face after face after face after face. You see loads of. I don't know if anyone else has seen that.
do, most definitely. Sometimes it's like looking down a tunnel and seeing mirror images of lots and lots of people that seem to, if you're not careful, rush at you. Like the mirrors get bigger as they go further down that tunnel and they start to come forwards. And it's like people are running at you, and that can be quite shocking. But if you keep still, they don't actually come out of the mirror. But it can be a bit discombobulating because it's like, and it's spirit testing you to see if you'll blink. Oh, are you going to put your hands up? You know, they want to know how sensitive you are.
Yeah, I'll let someone else talk though, because I've been
Just see that Linda Russell has raised a hand. So,
Linda.
Thank you. A biggie question. Can spirit help us as physicals, if you call us, with what's going on in the world at the moment?
Yes, there's a whole, yes, at the end of the day, 1940, let's see if I can remember off the top of my head. Wesley Tudor Pole started the silent minute back during the Second World War. And at 9:01, people would sit quietly in a room with a small light, like I was talking to a gentleman earlier about the small light in a darkened room, and they would sit quietly for 1 minute before 9. And then when Big Ben strikes 9, it is actually a whole minute for the 9 chimes, and everybody would focus. Everybody in the United Kingdom, Winston Churchill asked people to do this, and it became the silent minutes that everybody in the country prayed and asked that anybody who needed help in any way whatsoever would receive it in through the darkness of the night and the silent 9 o'clock healing minutes. And it was for anybody who anywhere is asking for help. So it was the war then, and it carried on, and it's actually still done by many people, whereby they sit quietly for the chimes of Big Ben at 9 o'clock in the evening, and that is the silent healing minute. And anyone in the world who has asked for help with anything, whether they're in Gaza, whether they're in Iran, Iraq, absolutely anywhere, anybody asking for help for them and their family or anything will receive it from all the people that are sending it. So it's like it was announced by Winston Churchill, King George I've forgotten which one it was in 1940. My history's left me. And it started then, and it's still done to this day. But it is at 9 o'clock in the evening. It's 1 minute that everybody gives and asks for help to go to all those that are requesting it anywhere in the world. And that can be to animals, any living thing that has asked for help. And it's the quickest way and the best way still of doing it. It's just a minute. But it's good to sit for a minute beforehand to get ready for that silent minute. That's a way of helping all the troubles we have. Anyone else got questions? I'm quiet.
May I ask something very briefly, please? Going back to talking about spirits in the astral realms.
Yes.
Could you say something about where the different realms are? Because I find people are always very vague about these the terminology.
There's lots of terminology, and that's the problem. It's a bit like at the end of the day, we as physicals are threefold beings. So we have our physical body, which is the bit we can touch. We've got our etheric body, which is inside our physical body and sticks slightly outside. And when you look at another person or even yourself in the mirror, you will see a silvery grey or slightly blue line around you. And that is showing you the edge of your etheric body, but it's inside you as well. And your etheric body is perfect. And then there's the astral body. So we are threefold beings. We have physical body, etheric, and astral body. And then we've got the realms. Anything, once we leave planet Earth and we cross the threshold to go home to the spiritual realms, that is the astral realm. And there is a lower astral realm and the astral realm. And the beings that live there, or our souls, the souls that's with us that are over there, they're all over there, and they're an energy, and they can look like a disc. They can look like an orb. Because once we've left our physical bodies here, it is the soul, which is an energy force that can move, and it can take any shape it actually wants. And so there's a lot of different people have different ideas about what the spiritual realms looks like. Some people say it's heaven. If that's what they believe, when they get there, they'll find that. There are others that believe there's nothing. And until they come back and tell us there was nothing, we're waiting to find out. But it's like, I mean, I astral travel at nights frequently, and I can travel all around the world if I want to. I just find that I'm constantly on going somewhere and waiting to arrive there. And then I get lots of images of beings that don't have form, that talk to me and give me information. And I can fly anywhere. If I want to go to India, it's much easier than getting on an aeroplane. I can be back in 10 minutes. I'm much happier going to India or anywhere and looking at anything, astral traveling. It's just easier. It's kind of cool. It's just that when I'm with other people sharing a room, they get very upset when they wake up and find me on the ceiling, not on the bed. So I'm up on the ceiling, and I'm actually not there. My soul's gone to the astral realms, and they get a bit freaked. It's always been a bit amusing.
And why would your physical body be on the ceiling?
I don't know, because I've never been there to see it. But others have told me that I'm on the ceiling. I'm actually lying like I was on the bed, but up on the ceiling. Very strange. I have never been in a room when somebody else has been on the ceiling. So I don't know. People have told me that's where I am. So I don't actually know. I can't answer it. I keep asking Two Moons, and he keeps saying to me, well, you're never going to see yourself, so it doesn't really matter, does it? He's got some good sayings for me, which is on a need-to-know basis, you don't. I'm bored of that one after 63 years. I'm bored of being told on a need-to-know basis, I don't. And, well, your brain won't be able to cope with it, so I'm not going to tell you.
Yes, I have had an experience. Well, at one point I was a student at Dartington College of Arts in Devon, and I was quite homesick for the place when I came up to live in Newcastle. And quite often at night I would find myself hovering over Dartington. It was dark. I couldn't see anything. I was just hovering over the main quadrangle, having a look at the place and just feeling
astral traveling.
And another time when I was an actual student, in the town centre of Totnes, there was a lovely little market on a Saturday morning.
There is, I know Totnes.
That I enjoyed, I was in the street behind the market, and I awoke one morning and thought, wonder if there's anything interesting in the market this morning. And instantly I was hovering over the market. And I thought, oh, this is interesting. How did this happen? And I thought, oh, well, I'm here now. I wonder if there's anything interesting on the stores. And I immediately zoomed in on each stall and went around and looked at what was everywhere on everyone. And I was aware that this was something that hadn't happened to me before. And I thought, have a good look at what's on each stall.
And then I can come and check later.
Check it later. So, of course, and then I was back in bed and I jumped out and dressed and raced around to the market. And everything on the stalls was exactly as I'd seen it before.
Yes.
So I thought, this is great fun. This is marvellous to be able to do this.
You have to have, you have a connection with something, you can do that.
Yes, I think it was the connection, because that's the only time that it happens to me is, although sometimes, a couple of times when I had a friend visiting and they were a bit late and I thought, I wonder where they are. I had a picture of them like a mile away walking along the road and I thought, oh, they'll be here soon. But it's not something that happens to me all the time, but it has happened. And it's very nice. It's lovely. Wish it happened more often, you know.
I do that when people are late for appointments. I actually just say, let me have a quick look where they've got to.
Yes.
And I can see what bus they're all coming up Brixton Hill, because I live in central London. And I know exactly where they are and what they're wearing.
Yes, it's good.
And it's kind of, you can freak them out if you say to them, you know, at this time you were just coming past, you know, Brixton prison. And they're going, oh, no, how did you know that? And I'm like, I can see you, you know, it is, yes, it's quite useful.
Yes, and I think if someone had told me about it beforehand, I'd have been very frightened.
Best not to know.
If it hadn't just happened perfectly naturally.
Yeah. Sometimes it's best not to know.
I just think it's lovely, and it's extreme, you know, very pleasant and very useful. So I wouldn't be at all frightened about flying. You know, people talk about flying as if it's something weird, but I think since it's happened to me, I think, well, if I'd been deciding now, if I decided I wanted to go somewhere, I might in my head imagine going into the town centre or going to the park or for a walk in the Dean. And it's exactly the same thing, you know, you're just imagining something that you've been to before and where you might go again. It's nothing odd or strange.
One thing that I've found useful is when I've got sick friends who are sick and sadly coming to the end of their life, I can leave here and go to them and sit by their bed. They're aware that I'm there sitting by their bed when I'm actually here, and I can sit with them and talk to them as they're dying and they're crossing over to comfort them that it's actually fine. And then I come back here, and what's interesting is after they've died and I've watched them die and I've made sure their soul's gone, I come home and I'm here pretty quickly and I'm thinking that is a blessing. It wasn't painful. They've then appeared in my bedroom to say thank you.
Yes.
And that for a healer is beautiful, because you've got double confirmation. And then they always come back to their funerals. The dead are always at their funerals. And they're often sitting, if it's their church that it's held at, and the regular church go, they sit in their own chair every single time, and nobody ever sits in it. Because when people try to sit in it, they move. And I've seen that so many times with regular churchgoers, that they come to their funerals and they're sitting in their chairs and they wink at me. And the vicar and I used to have a bit of a joke about some of the elderly ladies. And Barry, the vicar, used to say to me, let me guess, she's sitting in her chair just there, isn't she, Charlie? And I'm like, yep, she is. And he used to just think it was hilarious that they'd all be at their funerals and he knew exactly, he could sense where they were, but he couldn't see them. You know, but it's beautiful when you see it, and that actually they haven't really gone. I mean, their body has finished its life existence, but their spirit and their energy is there. It's lovely.
Yes, my father came and stood beside me during his funeral service. He stood beside me throughout the whole service, and then back at the house, he was wandering around listening to all the guests and, you know, chat as if he was just still there in the physical. And I could sense him walking around the room. And
you hear what he was saying? Because sometimes at a funeral, they'll say, I don't know what you're doing at my funeral because you didn't like me. I've had some very amusing conversations I've overheard of the person whose funeral was saying, well, I don't know what you're doing here unless you've come for the booze.
No, I didn't hear then, but he has several times since. If I've been in a difficult situation, he'll suddenly say advice, you know, or leave it alone, or don't get involved in that, or just don't do that, you know. It's always very brief, but very loud. And
you're totally aware that it's come from him.
Yes, I know it's him, it's his voice. And my mother did the same thing, because I'd been looking after her for 10 years and she had dementia and she died, and I had to travel to Wales for the funeral. I was absolutely exhausted. And the night before the funeral, I spoke to her and said, look, you know, dad came through and told me he was all right, and you haven't, and it would be nice if you could before the funeral tomorrow. And 5:30 the next morning, I awoke very suddenly, sat up, and she came in through the bedroom door and came and sat on the bed and chatted to me. And I could hear her talking, but unfortunately the words weren't that clear. But I could understand what she was saying, and she was doing this, you know, her mind was clear, and various other things. But later a friend of mine who is very psychic told me what had happened, and she said that my mother was trying to tell me that she was on the other side, she was all right, and her mind was now clear, that the dementia had cleared.
Normal. It's gone, all gone. Isn't that a blessing?
And she actually wrapped her arms around me, which felt like wings. I can understand when people describe wings being wrapped around them, because it felt like wings completely encircling me. And I was completely filled with healing, warmth, and all the 10 years of anxiety and exhaustion just melted away. I was on cloud 9. It was wonderful.
That's really lovely, isn't it?
Really good. So I think for me, it's ask for what you want. Don't wait until something happens. Say what you want, and then be open to it arriving is the lesson I've learned, you know.
And the thing is with asking for what you want is be careful what you ask for, because you will get it.
Oh, you'll get it, yes.
You've got to word it correctly. Lots of people make mistakes.
I've learned that lesson.
Yes.
I won't tell you how, but I've certainly learned that lesson.
Yes, be very, very careful what you ask for.
Careful what you ask for. Yes, I agreed with that completely.
It's good though, isn't it? It's reassuring, particularly when it's a loved one that's had dementia, and when they come back and they can tell you that they haven't got it anymore, it's gone. They are back to as you knew them before. That's just wonderful.
And the thing was, I was quite indignant, because I thought, I've struggled for 10 years, exhausted, and Mum's died, and you know, a couple of hours later she's back to normal, and I'm in a heap, can't function. She's fine, you know.
Yes, we take longer because we're physicals. We take longer.
That's right. There's no point in worrying too much, you know. You just take each day as it comes. And
well, it's not just that the dementia's gone. It's people that have basically lost limbs. Once they cross over, they've got the limbs back when they come back. You know, they're fully restored. If they were depressed or any of that, it's all gone.
Yes,
when they
that's
cross.
right. Because my mum had a dislocated hip from birth, which was never put right. And the other thing she was saying was her legs were fine, and she could now walk and dance and run, and she was very happy. You know, she was whole again.
Bliss.
Amazing. That quick, you know. So
it all leaves you behind.
I think time is very confusing for us. Excuse me.
But time doesn't actually exist.
No, I know.
Here.
That's the lesson to learn as well, isn't it?
And that is hard for the human brain to actually accept. Time means nothing.
Yes, and healing is instant once you pass over.
Instant.
And bring it on, you know. I don't want to hang around if I get. I just want to be over there having a nice time if I can.
I don't think any of us want to get dementia or Alzheimer's or anything awful. We'd just like to go perfect. Thank you very much.
Yes, straight across.
Go straight across and have fun.
And I later in a group, I'm going on a bit. I was with a group learning to receive messages and things. And one of the things I saw was my great aunt taking a tray of cakes out of the oven. And the the message I got was that we're having a party as soon as your mum arrives.
Well, this is it.
That added insult to injury. It's like they're all over there celebrating and having a party, and I've been left here on my own.
Well, this is it. But when you cross, they're all there waiting for you.
Yes.
And so you're walking into a party. It's like my best friend, when he died, he'd lost his sense of taste before he died. And he said to me about 2 days beforehand, he said, I've got to go soon. He says, because I can't taste the whiskey anymore. I said to him, I said, well, there's enough of your friends over there waiting for you. I think there'll be plenty of really good whiskey. And he said, not if I can't taste it anymore. I said, when you get over there, your taste will come back. And he said, if you're wrong, I'm coming back to tell you. I said, well, I hope you're coming back to tell me that you went over there to start with. And he did. He turned up so fast. He came to tell me. I mean, I knew he'd gone anyway. And then he walked into my bedroom and said, well, this is me going now. And he said, I can't wait for that whiskey. It's one of those things. And he came back the next day and said, tastes a lot better in the spiritual realms. So I laughed. I said, good.
Okay, I noticed we're just past the top of the hour, but Ali Denham's got a question.
Ali.
Oh, yeah, hello. I was just wondering if you had any experience of those who have passed but haven't quite made it to where they belong. You know, they're stuck on what I call the earthbound plane. I don't know whether you call it lower astral or whether it's known as lower astral or whether it matters what we call it.
Well, their earthbounds are still actually in our energy fields and around us. They haven't crossed. That's why they're earthbound. I clear them. I mean, that's one of the things. I am a clearance practitioner as well. So I clear them. I also clear nature spirits that aren't in the right places, elemental beings that aren't in the right spaces, and lovely things called malefic forces and forms. Earthbounds are easy to clear. What's happened is they've missed the tunnel of light, either because they were in pain and distress at death, or they were incredibly depressed. A lot of people who commit suicide don't see the tunnel of light, sadly, and they need rescuing. And there are rescue circles that deal with this a lot, because they're set up of people who know how to. There's also those of us that cross them over as we come across them.
TBH, what we're going to do. So,
well, sometimes what happens is if I go into London's underground, there are a lot of earthbounds down there. They get stuck down there. And so every time I go in an underground station, I clear them. And I clear regularly on full moons. And I do clearance an awful lot of the time, helping those that have got earthbound to cross over because they need help. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
It's very important that the work is done. And there's a lot of people in the throughout the world that sit specially to do rescue circles and to do clearance of earthbound souls. And particularly when you've had bad news on the television. So with the situation in Gaza and other places where there's war, where there are constantly people working to cross over those that have died in their homes and all of that, it's very natural for people to do that. And it goes on around the world. And often they link up, and a lot of them do it at certain times of the day.
Could I tell you a funny story?
Yeah, let's have a funny story.
I pick them up when I'm driving, and
yes,
for me, the M1 and the M6, for some reason, seem to be particularly magnetic. Anyway, this is during lockdown, and I've been with a friend to one of the HS2 protest camps, which was down near Newport Pagnell.
Lovely place, Newport Pagnell.
Ah, it's grand. We've done some good dowsing down there. Anyway, we needed to find the terminus to get to the motorway, you know, the junction.
Yes.
We knew we were only a couple of miles away from it. And then this weird thing happened. Of course, the sat nav stopped working. Of course.
Of course.
Neither of us could switch our phone on. Of course. Anyway,
guaranteed.
If you've ever watched one of those American movies where people drive for hours down a road and there's no sign of habitation,
yes,
I thought I was having a psychotic episode. I seemed to be driving for about 40 minutes. And then I said to my friend, are you experiencing what I'm experiencing? She said, what on earth is going on? She says, we were about 2 miles from that motorway junction and we've just driven for 40 minutes and we've not seen anything. I said, something's going on here. So I found a safe place to stop, which was actually at a T-junction where the road was wider. And I was so freaked out, I had to get a dowsing tool. I'd picked up 18.
Yes, roads do collect them.
So I do collect them like a dog collects fleas. So I negotiated with all their guardian angels and various other bodies that they'd all go, and they all went very happily. And then that didn't help us to get where we needed to go, which was to the motorway. And within seconds, a car turned up out of nowhere, the first car we'd seen for an hour. And
this sounds very familiar.
This man jumped out and he said, are you lost? And I said, we'd be so grateful if you'd tell us how we can get to the motorway. And he said, no problem at all, just follow me. And we were literally hundreds of yards away. And that was an angel. I am convinced that was an angel.
Probably. It's what I would call a spiritual being of some description.
Yes.
That comes at the time when you most need it. And probably turned up because she'd walked over the 18 earthbounds.
Yeah.
Obviously, you had to do that in order to continue your journey.
Yes, they wouldn't let us go.
They were distressed.
Yeah.
So you had to.
Yeah.
You find it on the A3 leaving London. There's a certain junction where there's always an earthbound.
Yes, I know. And there's I find them at these same spots on roads all the time.
Yes, yes.
It seems to be that they just kind of sit there like hitchhikers waiting for somebody to come along and pick them up.
Yes, they do. Just like hitchhikers. Except you don't necessarily notice them until they're sitting in the back of the car with you or on the bonnet or the roof.
Yes, or in my case, switching off all the electrical devices to the extent that sometimes I've been in cars that have actually stopped.
Well, electrical cars will stop. An electrical car will stop.
Yes.
That adds to the fun.
It does add to the fun. It's all marvellous, isn't it? We're not.
But it's interesting how you never get into trouble when that happens. And always someone or something comes and gets you to safety.
Yes.
Nearly always. I've never been stuck. I might be in the middle of nowhere, but usually, like you said, where you wanted to go is not far away. There's like a veil between it and you can't get there until this magical person turns up and takes you there.
Yeah.
It's like they're lifting a veil and you can go through it and there is the right road and you're pointing in the right direction.
It's an extraordinary experience and it's happened to me several times now when I've had a carload and I've had to send them on before I can get on with my journey.
The best one I had was I used to have Roger Moore on my sat nav.
Ah.
His lovely voice.
Yeah.
And when you get to your destination, he says, well, we are arriving at your destination. So, Roger and out from me. Now, I went down the road where the earthbounds usually are, and Roger's voice said, oh dear, we've got a passenger. And then I was like, oh dear, we've got a passenger, Roger. And we had a conversation, me and the imaginary Roger, with the passenger, cleared the passenger, and then Roger says, oh, and the passenger has now left the car. And I went through and got hold of the organisation that I got this from. Roger does not say that. But he did.
Yeah.
It was about 6 years ago. It was really freaky because I was having a conversation with Roger Moore that is not on there. And it was because, and he'd spotted the earthbound.
Yeah.
It was just one of the funnier moments when I just said, this is just a wee bit interesting. I'm talking to a machine that's answering me. And then I thought, well, maybe the earthbound is actually telling me in Roger's voice. Who knows? But I do find it amusing. And the fact that never does the mobile work when it's a spiritual thing. Never will the sat nav work.
Yep.
And usually, if you can park and get the map out, it'll be on the wrong page, not the one you should be on.
Oh yeah. Or you can't find the page in the atlas, and you go through the atlas about 5 times, and the page that you think you need isn't there.
Yes.
And it's there later.
And then when you get to where you're going, you find that the page is there.
Yeah, exactly. Oh yes.
Welcome to my world.
Me, Charlie.
Welcome to my world.
Yes.
Do you know what I do then? I do the Christopher Strong thing. Christopher used to basically ask his dowsing rods which way to go from where he is now to where he wants to go, and he will use the little dowsing rods in the car and just pay no attention to the maps at all because they lied to him.
Yeah, there's one in the front of my car as well. But
yeah,
it's a bit difficult doing it while you're driving. You could really do with a passenger.
Yeah, it's much better if you've got a passenger.
Yes.
You know, I mean, you know, Christopher's wife used to basically do the dowsing as he was driving.
Yeah.
I think sometimes she did the driving and he was doing the dowsing. But yeah,
it's a bit difficult if you got stopped by the police, not for using your mobile phone, but for having a dowsing rod in one hand. That would be interesting, wouldn't it?
Well, they would do you because they can actually do you for drinking out of a cup at the wheel.
Really? Not like
eating an apple and eating an apple. So
oh my goodness, I'm glad you told me that.
If you've got a dowsing rod, they would do you because you're meant to have both hands on the wheel. And you should not be eating or drinking whilst driving. No. Of course, though, if you've got one of these snazzy drive yourself cars, or, you know, you just sit there and it does the driving, I don't know what happens then. But certainly the police will do you for
I know what would happen then, Charlie. The damn car would be going collecting all these earthbounds, and you wouldn't get where you wanted to go because it would be taking you there.
Well, actually, the car would stop, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
It's a computer. It would stop.
Yes, it would.
It's getting on a bit, folks. Can I just finish with a last question? What are your thoughts on why we have a physical body then, Charlie? Why do we exist?
We are a spiritual being having a physical life, and so we need to be physical so other physicals can see us. Otherwise, they wouldn't see us.
Ah, I
mean, I'm surrounded by spiritual beings all the time. At this moment, standing behind me are 63 spiritual beings who are all listening to this conversation, and they can go through the computer. They can get to your rooms. Every single one of you has got one of mine being nosy. You know, it's a usual thing. But we are spiritual beings having a physical life, and we need to be solid to do that. And then the soul continues and has many lives. So the soul that's with me is now with Charlie Kennedy. Who knows who it's going to be with next time? tough luck.
Well, I hope it's someone equally as entertaining, because I've had great fun tonight. It's been a great talk.
This is good fun.
I feel we'll need to draw it to a close, so sadly, because it's 9:15. So, but maybe we can do it again sometime.
Yes, if everybody wants to.
Yeah.
We don't mind what they speak about.
So, well, I hope everybody's enjoyed it tonight, and many thanks, Charlie, for helping to support the BSD and giving us a talk. And we'll record the talk, and I will be posting it on YouTube. So if you want to watch any parts of it again, it'll be up there in a few days' time.
I'll tell people.
Yeah, on the BSD channel. Okay.
Lovely.
So
somebody asked something there.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, well, thank you all for actually taking time out tonight and listening to us rebel. Probably better than what's on the television, isn't it?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you and good night.
Yes, thank you very much, and good night, everybody. And
good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye. Bye.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.